1916. I believe your book, you said it was 1916. Can you describe what New York City was like? This was before the Holland Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge. It was probably, there weren't a lot of cars. Can you describe what the city was like then for us?
Well, it looked very much like the city I just left, which was Washington, D.C., because just apartment buildings, and there's a lot more traffic than Washington had. But it just kind of looked like an ordinary town, as I recall. It's kind of a long time ago, you know, you're asking me questions. A long time ago. So I'm doing my best.
Your first Ziegfeld Follies performance was in 1918. How were you chosen for that role?
My sister Pearl was in the Follies, and she was going down to a rehearsal one afternoon. So I asked my mother if I could go down with her and watch the rehearsals. So, because Pearl had said she'd love to have me go. So my mother said yes, but then I felt very kind of uncomfortable. I said, well, I don't have a long dress to wear to go down to the rehearsal. Could I wear Mary's long dress? My sister Mary had one. So Mary said, yes, you can wear my dress. So I put on her long dress, and I went down to the theater and was sitting there with Pearl during an intermission. And Ned Wayburn, who was the person in charge of the company and its production, he came over to give Pearl some instructions because she was helping him. And he kept looking at me. So when he finished talking with her, he said, who's this? Pearl said, it's my sister, my younger sister, Doris. He said, well, she looks enough like my wife to be her twin sister. Can she dance? Pearl said, yes, she can dance. He said, well, could she do Anne Pennington's routines? Pearl said, yes, she can do those. He said, all right. He says, I want her to go on the road and understudy Anne Pennington. So Pearl said, well, Mr. Wayburn, Doris is only 14, and I don't think her mother would let her go on the road without, by herself. He says, you tell your mother to go with Doris. I'll pay all her expenses. I want Doris to understudy Anne Pennington on the road. Be at rehearsal tomorrow morning. So the next morning I was at rehearsal at 10 o'clock.
I found it fascinating that in the mid-1920s there were 4 of your siblings on Broadway at once. There was Mary and Kid Boots, and you were in the Sap, and Pearl was also in it. How was it having virtually your entire family dominating Broadway back then?
Well, you know, you don't think about those things at the time you're doing them. And we were just having a wonderful time. We were all working, which was very important in show business. So we were just a very happy family to have all of us working that way on Broadway. And it was just a beautiful period in my life for show business with my family and our success. It was just delightful.
And how did the show business life for you end?
How did it end?
Yeah, it was in the 1930s.
It hasn't ended.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not over.
The Broadway portion.
Well, let's see, I got into movies. I know. After my 3rd year in the Follies, a director from England came over and was looking for a young girl to play in a movie that they were making. There was a new company starting, and he wanted an American girl for the star to play the part. So my agent had me go down and apply, and I was accepted. So my mother and I went to England, and I played in this English show. And for some of the exterior scenes, they took us to Egypt. So my mother and I had a wonderful trip to Egypt. We crossed the Nile every morning. They took scenes over there. And we saw the Sphinx, of course, and the tombs of the pharaohs. It was just a marvelous experience, and certainly unexpected to come that way through show business.
How did you get involved with the Arthur Murray Studios?
I was walking up Broadway one day, and a very dear friend of mine was walking toward me, and so we stopped to talk a little bit. She knew that I was looking for a job, and she said, I've just come from the Arthur Murray Studios, and their tap dancing teacher has just left, so they need a tap dancing teacher. She said, why don't you go and apply? So I said, that sounds wonderful, and I will. So the next morning I went up to the Arthur Murray studio and went up to the reception desk and said, may I see Arthur Murray, please? She said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I don't. But I hadn't noticed that there was someone standing just a short distance from the reception desk. So this person walked over and said, you wanted to see Arthur Murray? I said, yes, I did. He said, well, I'm Arthur Murray. He said, what did you want? I said, I understand that your tap dancing teacher is leaving, and tap dancing is my specialty, and I would like to apply. He said, yes, I know about the Eatons. I know you're all very wonderful dancers. He says, yes, that's okay with me. He said, you just apply for work tomorrow morning. So he took me over to the reception desk and said, book Miss Eaton with all of the future tap dancing requests, please. She'll start tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So I was with Arthur Murray at 10 o'clock the next morning, and I've been with him ever since. It was a wonderful experience, really, because my studio, my tap dancing studio, which was the only one in the school, was on the same floor where he had the men teachers teaching. And one of those teachers liked to practice the new things, so he'd come and get me and teach me the steps and practice with me. So that's where I began to learn social dancing. And I just loved it. And there's such a variety of movements and patterns in it. It just became fascinating. So I began to study it quite thoroughly. And with this partner, he had been asking Mr. Murray for some time to let him open a branch studio outside of New York. So Mr. Murray put him off about 2 years, but this time he said, yes, you can. The Statler Studio has asked me for a couple to do some entertaining in their dinner hour, and they'll also give me a space for a dance studio. He said, well, why don't you inside go ahead and do that, take that. So that's what we did. Got in size broken down Ford, drove to Detroit, and next day we opened the first Arthur Murray branch studio in the country in the Detroit Statler Studio, Statler Hotel in Detroit.